Dr. Samke Ngcobo shares intimate details of herself in her book titled Reflections of a Convoluted Mind, A Journey with My Mental Illness. Now, in this book, she opens up about what she described as an emotional roller coaster and mental state she's been battling with for almost 2 decades. And she joins us now on Zoom to help us unpack her personal story as she details it in this read. A very good morning to you, Dr. Ngcobo. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning, and good morning to all the viewers.
Now, speak to us about why you decided to open up about your personal journey with mental illness in this book.
I reached a major turning point last year following a major relapse that was quite public. And I felt that I needed to channel my pain after that experience. I was placed on incapacity leave for 6 months by my doctor. And I've always wanted to write a book at some point in my life. And it felt fitting at that time to channel my pain and experiences because it was quite a cathartic experience for me to do so.
Yeah. And you say that sanity is something so critical and delicate, but yet is often taken for granted. Please elaborate on this.
Absolutely. I feel that, we wake up in the morning, a lot of the time we are sort of unconscious about the things we do on a day-to-day. I feel like we don't really realize how much it actually takes to remain well until we're not. And for me, I want to appreciate it for the fact that when I'm unwell, my life is completely upside down. I'm vulnerable to everybody. My life is in control of other people. So when I am well, I become aware and appreciative of that state of being.
Let's now take it back to the beginning. When did you realize that you may be losing your mental composure?
Oh, it wasn't a realization on my part. It's other people around me. When you're losing your mental composure, it's not something that you see by yourself. So at that time, I was 14 years old. It was 2001, so it's exactly 20 years ago at this point. And I think I was displaying behavior that was escalating in terms of abnormality to a point where my parents ended up taking me to the hospital. And that was my first encounter with mental health care services at the time I was still based in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah. And you say that when one loses their mental composure, it can sometimes be humiliating to both the individual and their loved ones, isn't it?
It's absolutely humiliating because when you can't control your own behavior and you're in full view of everybody, for example, I'm a very private person. So to find yourself that unwell and behaving abnormally and not being able to control that abnormal behavior, when you return in hindsight and realize the things you were doing, it's deeply humiliating, it's deeply scarring. And also, we have a very strong issue of stigma nowadays. And because of that, people start labeling you based on your illness and stop seeing you as that person. I'm a medical doctor, but when I had my relapse, the most recent one I had last year, people stopped seeing Samke, the doctor and professional, but I became boxed in and they only saw the bipolar disorder. And that's when I realized that the issues run far deeper than what I realized.
And having had to fight this battle for so many years, Dr. Ngcobo, and eventually becoming an advocate for mental health and wellness, what are some of the important lessons and tips that you can share with us when it comes to this subject?
The biggest lesson, I believe, is having empathy. I think people need to inform themselves. I say oftentimes that the best storyteller about mental health issues is the person experiencing themselves. So I believe that the level of empathy that people have needs to increase. People need to educate themselves about it. And also, I believe that people who have mental illnesses need to be brave enough to come forward, although it's very hard because of the stigma, because no one can understand our experience fully than the person going through it. And I felt that I'm in a position of sort of not power as such, but of information where I live a life of a doctor and a mental health care user. And I felt that it's a very powerful position to speak from both angles of knowing the science behind it, but also speaking about the illness itself as a patient. And for me, I come forward to as a person living with it more than anything.
And I suppose empathy goes very well hand in hand with support. Let's talk about the importance of support, especially from families of the individuals that are mentally unwell.
It is absolutely critical. I believe that the support structure for a patient living with a mental illness is absolutely critical. My family has been integral in my well-being. My close friends and family have been integral. They understand me more than I understand myself at times. They are able to see when I'm unwell, when I can't see it myself. So I think it's a very important factor in the patient's well-being. Oftentimes we speak about taking medication We talk about, your exercise, your running. We talk about all those things. But the critical non-pharmacological, or rather where you don't take medication, that's a very, very important and critical element. And for me, it's been my saving grace. And also, I believe it's very important to have an integrated approach to a patient, because we are multifaceted people anyway.
And what are you hoping this book would do for those who may find themselves struggling with mental vulnerabilities?
My biggest wish is for them to not feel alone. I want the person reading my book to feel that they are validated in their experience. I want them to feel that they are not alone in it. I had to dig deep in writing, so it's in all chapters, but the particular one about depression, I had to dig deep into my experience, because I feel like suicide rates are incredibly high nowadays. And I am writing to that person who feels that they've lost hope. And if they can see a mirror, I want somebody who struggles with mental issues to read and find a mirror of their experience, so that it gives them hope to see that there's hope beyond the other side, and also to know that it's an ongoing journey. I may have had those experiences in the past, but even to this day, I still struggle.
Tell us more about an NGO that you founded called Sisters for Mental Health.
Sisters for Mental Health is my passion project. It started incredibly informally. It was a WhatsApp group, but it's become an NPO that I started last year during my incapacity leave. I mentioned to you that I was placed on incapacity leave for 6 months from the time of April until September. And it was those times where I got to be in touch with my creative side and my personal experiences and my vulnerabilities. So Sisters for Mental Health is something that is very dear to me, because at times it's been something that's been my saving grace. We speak about our experiences. We connect, we talk about our struggles. We connect about life in general. It's a very important thing that we all discuss during our hikes. And I also bring professionals and experts to come and speak to us. We recently on where we all met and had a hike there, and one of the psychiatrists came.
No, Dr. Ngcobo, I'm going through a study which provides that there's actually evidence of physical activity improving mental well-being and having the potential to prevent symptoms of mental health disorder. What are your thoughts on this?
There is, interestingly, you're mentioning this topic, and that's exactly the topic we had during our hike on the 27th of April at Walter Sisulu. The psychiatrist who came, Dr. Chawane, when she was speaking to us, she was talking about primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. Because many mental illnesses are preventable, although there are some which are lifelong. For example, bipolar is a lifelong illness, which one can't necessarily prevent as such, and schizophrenia, for example. But there are some which can be managed where the secondary management or primary management, like anxiety disorders, your depression. So these studies, it's great that there's studies like that which are now coming to the fore.
What about the stigma associated with those with mental illnesses? How do we deal with such a stigma in our society?
I didn't realize just how serious the level of stigma is, to be honest, until I found myself in the glare of it. I think we have a very long way to go, although the journey has started and people wanting to understand mental health issues. I believe that psychoeducation, teaching the community about it, is an important thing. I believe that people coming forward who have these struggles, mental health advocacy is very important. That is why I've come to the fore. And, I like my privacy and space, but I feel like the cause is bigger than me. So that's why I felt that much as I would tell friends and family that, I have bipolar disorder, I feel like the picture is greater than me. And I thought I'll come forward. Then there's many other incredible people who are doing amazing work in this regard, because I believe, and I repeat, the best storyteller is the person experiencing it. And people need to hear it from our perspective, because often
Dr. Samke, you've just mentioned, spreading awareness around this condition and educating the masses about it. But I suppose the most important is, just a training or maybe capacitating the family members of those who've got a mental illness and mentally preparing them to take care of those who are mentally unfit. Absolutely.
And that comes with psychoeducation. I think it comes from, the multidisciplinary team in the hospital. When they are important, they play an integral role in equipping families I do believe that these drives are very important in teaching people. I also believe that patients who live with the illness need to speak up to their family about their lived experiences, about how they feel they wish to be treated when they're well. For example, it's hard to want people to teach you when you're unwell, but when you become better, I think it's important to have these conversations with your family members and say, look, yes, I am unwell at this point, but I want you to understand that this is how I want to be managed when I'm unwell. This is how I want to be treated. Please be aware that this feels undermining when you do it. This feels patronizing when you do it. This feels stigmatizing, basically.
Dr. Samke Ngcobo, we really appreciate, waking up so early in the morning and sharing the issues around mental health and awareness. And we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much.